What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. Welcome to Sales Talk for CEOs. I have a topic that a lot of people ask me about frequently. And that topic is negotiations. Now, I'm not a negotiation expert, right? I'm a sales expert dealing with a complex sale. But in my daily communications, I find myself having to negotiate. And I know that most CEOs do. Now, a lot of times we think about negotiation sort of in a negative way, like when there's a family dispute, a divorce, a problem, and we have to negotiate and there's attorneys involved and stuff like that, right? Or when we have a client, a big client that wants to get out of their contract, we got to negotiate, or a new customer that's got a really complex contract, or want to negotiate the price, things like that. Well, those certainly are moments when we absolutely will need some great negotiation skills. But today, we're actually going to talk about those moments throughout your day when you're negotiating and how you can be better at it. And I am just thrilled to have two absolute experts on the topic of negotiations with me today, Jim Camp and Vladimir Bushin from Camp Negotiations. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Alice.
Good to be here.
So quickly, before we dive into this topic, just tell everybody a little bit about what Camp Negotiations provides and who they provide it to.
Okay, happy to do that. Camp Negotiations was started about 30 years ago by my father, Jim Camp Sr. So therefore, I have to go by Jim Camp Jr. He passed away about 10 years ago. But for decades now, Camp Negotiations has been working with clients, I would say, across all types of industry, from very unique backgrounds. And essentially what we do is we help folks adapt a mindset for negotiation. We help them adapt a structure of preparation and debriefing. So some deals that have multiple iterations will help them keep track of where they stand and how things are actually progressing. And then we also help them adapt to behaviors. Kind of a systematic approach to any negotiation is really what we do. What's unique about Camp Negotiations is that we spend most of our time coaching. So what that means is we're actually working with clients on real deals, things that they're currently faced with. And we do some training along the way to help them embrace the system that my father started and that we've developed over the past 30 years. So really, we are in the trenches with our clients, confidentially helping them on big deals, big agreements that are important to them.
Yeah, fantastic. And do you have any specific vertical market, or do you help any company?
It's interesting. It depends on who reaches out to us. Trying to keep everything confidential. I mean, we've coached folks that are dealing with a family crisis. Recently I did a talk up in Ohio with about 75 social workers that deal with children's welfare. Very difficult situations to help them handle, the emotions of what they're dealing with in those crisis engagements, right? Those are very tough agreements. So it ranges anywhere from people that are just trying to get better because it's important in their personal or business life, or of course we have complex deals like mergers, acquisitions, that are very high level. So it really runs the spectrum, which is partly why I enjoy this so much.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. And we'll jump into that some more in a minute. But Vlad, before we get started, because you and I talked about this, when we met pre-show, I think that sometimes people don't really understand what is the definition of negotiation, right? And like I was saying in the intro, we kind of give it a bit of a negative connotation, but really we're negotiating all day, every day. So let's start with getting a firm agreement on what is negotiation.
Yeah, if you would allow me to pitch in here, it is really not well defined. and sometimes in perception of negotiation could be different for different people and different industries and different experience, and probably because it's formed by some media and movies and such, and people may have a negative connotation about it. And the first question we ask typically is like, when we say word negotiation, what runs through your mind? What thoughts are you having about that? So Alice, do you mind if I ask you, like, what do you think about when you hear word negotiation?
Well, I think, oh, this might be hard. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, it makes me kind of tense and nervous.
Right. It's usually tensity, nervousness. Maybe you think about money. Many people think like negotiation equals money, right? What are the cliche of negotiation that we have? What people usually say about it?
A cliche. Let me see. Somebody has to lose.
And it has to lose, or win-win, right? Or compromise, meeting in the middle.
Hmm.
So many things we may think like we need to do something specific to negotiate, and that all kind of narrows down the whole idea of negotiation, which really, in a nutshell, is just an effort to bring about an agreement between people,
Okay,
two or more
pause
people.
there. Let's say that again. So, really, negotiation is just an effort to bring about agreement between two parties.
Yeah,
That's
between
it.
two or more parties.
Hmm.
And there's only one caveat here. Those parties are independent agents. They can walk away and say no. There's no power over them. And one of the areas where people want the most camp negotiations help is when a smaller company goes against a huge conglomerate and they don't have any power over them. They need to use the power of negotiation, and that is where negotiation shines.
Yeah.
How do you do that? That's the question. How do you actually negotiate when you don't have any leverage?
Yeah. And I think a lot of times we're in that position where we have to negotiate and we don't really have any leverage. And I think that most people want a positive outcome, but I'm curious from both of you, over your years of doing this, because we're trying to come to an agreement, could be a small agreement. Again, we were talking about how everyday things that we have to agree on, or something huge, right? Do you feel like most people want to come to an agreement where it is more so win-win, even when it's compromise? Or do you feel like some people think someone has to lose in order for there to be a negotiation?
I'll handle that, Vlad, if you're okay.
True.
That's a great question. So one thing that we see often is the moment, because both parties in any negotiation, they can pretend that they're not emotional, right? But both parties, there's usually a lot riding on these agreements. And the moment they start to feel pressure, or they start to feel that the deal is under duress, especially a small company going against a big conglomerate, like you mentioned, the moment they start to feel that pressure, their natural instinct, because I believe most people in our country believe, or in the world for that matter, that negotiation involves compromise. And what we try to help folks do is avoid unnecessary compromise, because when they feel the pressure and they feel that sense that, okay, I've got to have a win-win deal, or I don't want to lose, they start thinking, what do I have to give up in order to get an agreement? So that's when unnecessary compromise typically happens. It happens every day with our clients. And that's one thing we try to help them understand, that you've got to change your mindset, right? Everybody at the table has the ability to reject, or the power to say no. And it's okay. And unfortunately, most people are so afraid of that word. And what we find is that when you give somebody the right to say no when you're negotiating, regardless of the type of an agreement, even if it's with your family or with the coworker or somebody that you're negotiating with your boss. If you give somebody the right to say no instantaneously, you appear less needy. You are managing your own emotions because you're not showing any fear, but it also demonstrates respect. respect that the other party has, the right to say no. And really, no is just a decision. And once we reach a no, if we've treated our other party with respect, we can find out where we're falling short. We can find
Yeah.
out what the real problems are.
I think because it is emotional, right? We get all these feelings mixed in with what's actually happening, right? And what power we do have, which is the power to say no. And in fact, you've written 2 books about that, which, just getting to know or starting with no. You'll have to tell us what the titles are, but 2 books about no. So tell us a little bit about those books.
Okay, so Start With No was written by Jim Camp Sr. back in, I think it was published in 2002. So it's been around for a long time. Interestingly enough, that book is still, on the bookshelf at the Harvard bookstore. It's still required reading in most graduate programs. So that was that was his flagship. That was, he put his flag in the ground with that book. And it really went against the premise of win-win. Basically, we can't control the wins and losses, let alone, the wins and losses of the other side. I mean, it's just something you can't manage. So that book was his start. And then he wrote another book Jim Sr. wrote another book called No, the Only System of Negotiation You Need for Work and Home. And that was kind of a follow-on book because we started to discover that this system that we teach and the system that he founded and really started works in all forms of negotiation. So if I say negotiation, most people think, okay, there's a sales negotiation, procurement negotiation, contract negotiations, family negotiations. I mean, the list goes on and on. And recently I published a book called Lead From No. And Lead From No, the premise to that is leadership, right? The ability to lead others and to keep them on your team is an actual form of negotiation. That's kind of my argument in my book. So if you think about the definition of negotiation, right? The effort to bring about agreement with 2 or more parties, with all parties having the right to say no or the right to veto, that happens every day as a leader. Yeah. Your followers choose to stay with you on your team. It's a very fragile, ongoing, enduring agreement that you have to nurture and you have to take care of. So that's why I approach the philosophy of leadership, that subject, and argue that it is a form of negotiation. The same thing that makes you an effective negotiator will make you a much more effective leader. They go hand in hand. So that's kind of the premise and the lineage of the 3 books.
That's great. That's a great lead into my next question, Vlad. So what are those things, right? What are those things that make you good at negotiation? And, are there, I know it's mindset. So what does the mindset have to be? And then what are the actual things that we have to do to be good at coming into these agreements, right? And making them work?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alice. It's pretty much, we need to talk about the heart of sales. And of course, sales is a complex process that involves structure and organizing that, and spending your time wisely and being efficient at managing the team. But in the end, it's a personal conversation between the sales rep and the customer. It's always like that. And when we look at this, we think about there are different skills of sales representatives, and everybody is achieving different results, and it's a wide range. You can see people following the same script, the same procedure, working in the same system, and at the same time having widely different results. Some of them are struggling, some of them are doing okay, and some of them are rock stars. They take it all. So what is the challenge here? Why is it so different? And even they are working off of the same script. They have same meetings and seemingly doing the same. The problem is that the sales reps themselves have a hard time understanding that. Even if they go and shadow each other, there are some people who wants to learn about it. They go shadow a rock star sales rep, and they see that they're following the same script, and they say, I can't figure out what's the difference. It's the same thing, but for some reason people buying from these guys much more often. What's the problem? So the reason is because it's in the human behavior, it's in the human psychology. And especially when we talk about high stakes deals, when emotions go strong, who trains sales reps for controlling emotions, reading emotions on the set, and appropriately addressing those emotional challenges and making the right decisions about that? Who trains that? And how often sales reps coach to keep their own emotions under control?
Yeah, I think that's a really tough one, Vlad. And I only know one person, my good friend Colleen Stanley. She teaches salespeople EQ, right? Emotional intelligence. And it's so, so needed, especially today. But yeah, so here we are in this situation, whether they're the CEO negotiating a deal or a sales rep or a team, right? And they are bringing their emotions to the table clearly, even if they have a process that starts us off in a difficult place. But I'm human. I bring my emotions with me. So what am I supposed to do? Like, I guess the mindset has got to be clear. So let's talk about that first. So what's the mindset I need going into any negotiation where I need to get an agreement? I heard maybe from Jim that we shouldn't walk in with a win-win, but what is the mindset we should walk in with? And let's go through then some of the things that we can learn to be better at these negotiations. So what's the mindset?
So personally, I think the most important part of the mindset is letting go of assumptions and being able to blank slate. I think, EQ and having that, the emotional intelligence to kind of know where you are in a deal is really important. I think the idea of, Vlad mentioned script, right? And I know that there's CEOs out there listening. I know that there are companies that essentially, push people to execute a presentation, right? To give demos, to do all those things, right? In the automobile industry, hey, try to get the person to test drive the car. That's the best chance you have of selling something, right? To build vision. So the ability to slow down, right? And realize that you can't control the outcome. You can't control other people's decision making. But instead of pitching a script and just hoping that, if a product has dozens of features and benefits, the notion of, well, I have to really push hard. Like when people hear the word sales, they sometimes think of aggressive, trying to close the deal, that type of a mindset. The mindset for sales, one thing that will help, I think, everybody is if they say to themselves, why are we here? What prompted the lead? Or what challenge is my opponent, the person I'm negotiating with, really trying to solve? What are they trying to optimize for? And instead of jumping right to a presentation, when we can slow down and understand that the questions we ask, we have a saying at camp negotiations, we should be doing 75% listening and only 25% talking, even in a sales role. What are they trying to solve? What challenges do they see? What are they afraid of? What does their budget look like? There's so many things we have to uncover. So what we hear is more important in negotiation than what we say. And when you can slow down and relax and really connect with your customer and understand their world, once you really get a good, clear picture of what they see sitting from their side of the table, that's the challenge. If you can approach any deal that way and see what they see, you got a pretty good chance of knowing what to present and when. So slowing down, getting to know the customer, and not showing that we need the deal. Desperation or neediness is the one thing that will scare anybody away. If you don't believe me, just walk there's still today organizations that push aggressive sales tactics. And it blows my mind that they still continue to do that, hoping that it works. It might work once in a while, but I know they're leaving money on the table because people want to be talked to. They want to have a conversation, like Vlad said. And when you can really connect and give them the right to say no, you throw that in there and let the pressure off of the situation. Hey, look, if this is a fit, great. If not, you can tell me no, it's okay. In fact, if I can't help you here, I'll point you in the right direction. I'm only here to help you make a good decision.
Exactly. And I think that's important, right? So let go of the outcome, which is I have to do a demo, I have to get a sale,
Right.
right? And that's hard because salespeople have a lot of downward pressure on them, right,
I
to
know.
close deals. And in any negotiation, we may feel pressure to get something that we need, right? But if we think about coming forward with, hey, I'm here to learn and understand, and it's okay if it isn't a fit. Let go of the expectation that I have to sell something and let go of that outcome and have it be really my expectation is to learn something, learn about you, learn about the outcomes that you need, and learn whether this whether there's anything to agree on or not, because maybe it's not even a fit, right? So I think that's so interesting. So I think that's kind of the first step. Like you come to this negotiation, it could just be a conversation where you're trying to come to agreement on the next step, where the next step might be, it's been great to talk to you, got a new friend, but we're not going to do business together. Or it could be, hey, this sounds like a really good fit. Let's keep exploring. So, Vlad, when you've, worked on these negotiations with some of the salespeople that I know you've worked with, how have you helped them let go of that? And I think really it has to start with senior leadership, right? Like if the sales managers are putting so much pressure on salespeople to sell no matter what, close that deal, bad deal or not, fit or not, how can you help companies, leaders, and sellers come into this new mindset?
Mhm. Yeah, it's pretty funny that you said that. That leader says close, 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 and the question is like, what most CEOs care about regarding sales department? Well, that they will just create the revenue, right? This is where the top line is getting created, and of course, it doesn't help to say close, 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 because it's kind of like telling comedian, stand-up comedian, hey, well, make more funny jokes, right? Get more claps. So of course, there are certain things that causing those claps and laughter in the audience, but you cannot really push it. Instead, you need to focus on the right thing. So most of the, first of all, you need to control emotions. And in order to control emotions in a complex conversation, when there's a lot of variables, you could compare it to a flying a commercial plane or a military jet where there are so many gauges and different handles, and you need to keep control of all of it. I'm sure that Jim can talk better about that. And you need to do it well when you have a threat. When your emotions go high, the only way to do that is to follow the system. And this is what camp negotiation is all about. It's not a linear system. It is a system based on principles and the laws where you can make the right decisions. So negotiation is all about making decisions. It's a decision-making system. It's not a script. It's not a trick. It's not about addressing objections. It's about making right decisions. And when we say, it's okay to have just a conversation, but no, we actually have a goal. The question is, where's the focus? What gives you more control in negotiation? So the first thing I do is to bring people to realize where is the right focus. And this is the step number 2. When you have that mindset, then you need to understand what do you have in control. So what is in your control? When you're a stand-up comedian, what you can control? You can only control your behavior. You can control how you deliver jokes. And I'm making this parallel because many people do not know what negotiation is, but they probably so some stand-up comedians here, right? So you need to control your behavior, you need to control your emotions, and you need to control your decisions. You need to control your conclusions. What kind of assumptions you're making? Are you getting off track there? Are you losing structure? So you need to understand, and you need to also read the emotions of the other side. You need to realize where you are in order to make the right decisions to pivot if you need to. So the second step, I would say that's a critical, when you get the right mindset, is to understand what's in your control. Jim, do you have anything to add to that?
I just had a real example. I mean, I had a conversation last night with my son, James, who is leaving basically, he was an analyst in private equity, and now he's jumping into the sales arena. And he said, this is not about, it used to be about giving elaborate presentations and really knowing your stuff. With these investors, sophisticated investors, he was used to being very, there's a very defined process and structure. And what he's learning really quickly in the sales world, I'm so glad he's doing this, because he wants to be a CEO someday. He's like, I need to learn how to do this. I need to learn how to negotiate. And he said, being able to react in the environment when the unexpected happens takes practice. And when you think about, and Vlad, you had a great example about, following a system gives you emotional control. Well, if you picture like first responders and how they handle real life and death situations, the unexpected happens every day, right? The unexpected in the operating room happens every day. And the reason they're able to maintain their emotional composure and keep it together and work together as a team is because they use a very defined systematic approach based on laws and principles of medicine or aviation or whatever the case may be. So system gives you that emotional control and helps you manage your behaviors. But I'll say this, it is a human performance event. We all have bad days, right? And we all make mistakes. And, one thing I like to, if I were talking to CEOs about their sales team, instead of applying that downward pressure, we all know results are required to stay in business, right? It's like, if my daughter doesn't hit the ball at the plate playing college softball, she's not going to be in the batting lineup. She knows that. But we focus on our activity and behavior and things we can manage very, kind of slowly with patience with ourselves. And as coaches, that's what we uncover. What are they good at? What do they struggle with? Where do they fall short? Like Vlad said, you can go out and shadow somebody and they're just tremendous at sales, right? They just have a natural gift. And then others try to duplicate that, and they can't, right? It's not something that can be, you can learn a little bit, but learning yourself and understanding your greatest strengths can become your greatest weakness and vice versa. So system gives emotional control, gives you the ability to at least come back and fight another day, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. So coming in with the right mindset is super important, right? To any negotiation, any conversation, again, where you want to get an agreement to something. And then you've got to be able to control your own emotions against what's happening, right? So and to do that, you have to have a system. And it's interesting because for me, I feel the most in control in a conversation, especially sales conversation, when I'm listening, not when I'm talking. And I always say this to people, the only time I'm certain that I have your undivided attention is when you're talking to me, right? The rest of the time, if I'm talking, I don't know what you're thinking about dinner or your mom or any other thoughts that you may be having. But when I'm able to listen to you and stay in active listening and, to help you keep telling me whatever, you need to tell me the story about, then I feel like I have better control and I can control my emotions that way too. So it's interesting to me because salespeople do tend to want to talk more, right? And we have to teach them not to do that because that listening is so important because they discover so many things. You also talked about the unexpected. And I think in sales, especially, what we're looking for is something unexpected because today, if we can't bring some insight into the conversation, we're probably not going to get very far. When we hear something unexpected, then we're able to respond to that and perhaps give some insight. And so this is really where I want sellers to go these days, right? I want them to be able to ask great questions and listen and do that active listening, go on, tell me more. That's interesting. What else about that, right? So that they are controlling their own emotions, right? Controlling the conversation by getting the person to give them more information. And I think in negotiations, tell me if I'm wrong, but you need more, the more information you have, the better able you are to negotiate. Is that true?
Absolutely. And one thing I'd like to bring up, because you hit on something really important, the unexpected. often, and this is something that sales folks can look in their own emails. They can, really pay close attention to themselves when they're engaged with a client or a potential client, is the types of questions they ask. Whenever you're negotiating with somebody and you ask a question that forces a decision, that automatically triggers emotion in the other side. So for example, instead of saying, Alice, does this look good to you? Are you happy with this deal? Right? If I ask that question, I might get an unexpected answer, right? Because if I'm looking for a yes, right, because I want to move the deal forward, I want to reach an agreement, and I hear, maybe, right? I might get caught off guard. Where do I go from there? Just changing from asking verb-led questions that actually force people to make decisions. That's what I think is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
If I say, are you having a good day? Your brain has to respond to that by saying yes or no. If I say, tell me about your day,
Mm-hmm.
what's your day been like? So when we ask interrogative-led questions, or what we refer to as open-ended questions, that's what helps keep the conversation going. And the other thing I'll add to, you talking to Vlad about, the mindset and what's important. Always, always, always maintain a nurturing and respectful posture. There is no room for power and leverage. There's no, boy, if you don't purchase this now, it might not be here tomorrow, and trying to create fear, sense of urgency. None of that works. What works is staying relaxed, focused, and helping them talk and share the information. The more you can gather, the better chances you have of reaching an agreement. And when it comes time to close the deal, you don't have to close. You don't have to say, doesn't this look great? Are you ready to move forward? You can ask a question and say, okay, where are we at this point? What have I overlooked? What problems or challenges do you see? Which seems counterintuitive. Why would you ask that question? Well, if there is a problem or there is a challenge, you're better off to get it on the table to see if you can fix it. Right? So it's not being afraid of what you're going to hear, and there is no closing. Closing doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, this is why in the Miller Heiman speak, like we call it getting commitment. There is no close, right? Because the final commitment is they want to buy from you. You are finding the fit. And if there's a fit, we both commit to do the next actions that it's going to take to move forward. There's nothing, people used to talk, and I hope they don't anymore, but they say, trial close, do a trial close, do a trial close. I'm like, what on earth is that? A trial close? What you're looking for is equal commitment. When you're in a situation where you're trying to come to an agreement, and it's especially when it's about buying something from you, right? You want to work towards that agreement. And that means that both parties are willing to commit to do what it's going to take to continue moving forward. And if they're not willing to commit, there's probably a reason, right? And you need to find out what that is. And sometimes you can talk about that reason and then get a commitment and keep moving forward. And sometimes you can't. But again, it's hard because CEOs and leaders put a lot of pressure on that. But all right, Vlad, let's keep going on this. So we know we got to come with the right mindset, and we know we have to really be in check with our own emotions and ask questions and listen. What are some other things that we need to be able to do to come to agreement?
Yeah. So first of all, the mindset, and second of all is the right focus. Staying in the system, having the right focus, and there are different examples that we hear here. For example, of asking the right question, creating the nurturing environment, avoiding being needy. There are many things and many principles in the system. The question is, how do you actually perform that? What makes a good team to become great? And we know that when it comes to human performance, there's always pressure. There's always emotional game there. How do you get better at that? So there are many negotiation trainers to come in, deliver a training, and then leave it up to you to continue doing that. How helpful is that if you're learning, say, dancing? Or how helpful is that if you're learning the comedy, stand-up comedy? It's not really helpful. You need the constant feedback. So this is, there is a story about the Yale and Harvard and they were competing for rowing for a decade, and Harvard always win because they had a coach, and Yale refused to get a coach. And finally, after 10 years of trying, they got a coach, and then they were successful for 2 decades after that. So the only way to get better at human performance skill is to have a system, have a right focus, and have someone who would continuously give you. So you can already come to you and say, hey, Alice, you remember you talked to me about this and you asked me this question. At that moment, I felt I want to buy. How often do we get that feedback? Not very often. We do not get the critical feedback, and this is why coaching is so crucial, so important, because we actually can provide the environment where people can grow as salespeople and train those things. And this is the third thing that CEO need to think about. How do you create environment for growing human performance skills in my sales? Not putting pressure on them and say close, 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 because it's not going to help. Like what is going to help, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what CEOs need to know, right? What is going to help improve performance so that they make sure their sales leaders are doing those things that help improve performance, and certainly understanding how to come to agreement, how to negotiate, right, is going to help their salespeople. But that coaching is so important. And I think that it's something I talk about a lot. Sales managers, frontline sales managers should be doing that coaching. That means calls either have to be recorded, or the sales manager or some others have to be on the calls with, with the selling team, so they can hear what's going on and be able to give them that feedback that is so precious that you're talking about. Because otherwise, how will they know? Right now, it'd be great if we could get the coaching from the buyer. But unfortunately we can't. Now, I was just at a conference with Corporate Visions, and we were taking a look at a lot of coaching tools that are with AI, where the AI is pretending to be the buyer and it can give you some feedback. Yeah, there's some merit to it, and I think it could be helpful. But I think the most helpful is, when there are people right in the conversation. And then I also love getting some feedback from the customers after a deal is either lost or won, to ask them about these moments. And some companies are better at doing that than others. Most don't go back to the customer and ask them, but I think that would be really important as well. So let's talk a little bit about the system. So you guys have a system that you teach people. It's not linear. It gives them the tools they need to use in the moment. So let's talk a little bit about that system.
Sure. So the foundation of the system is what we call the mission and purpose. Like, what are we trying to deliver? How do we want to deliver that? Like, that's acceptable to us. But what's really the most important part of any negotiation is trying to figure out, how does my opponent benefit? How do they, in their world, not to my benefit, to their benefit from this agreement that I'm setting out to try to accomplish? What is it that I'm trying to help them see and discover? Because it's real easy to get confused and to just start talking and presenting information thinking that that's what's going to make a difference for them. Really, when you can ask the right questions and find out, why are we sitting down to negotiate in the first place? If it's a sales interaction, what prompted them to walk into the meeting? Why did they agree to take the next step, right? It's a series of decisions to reach a sales agreement. So you start there and figure out, what is the real purpose here? What am I trying to help them see and discover? That's kind of the foundation. And then from there, this is going to sound really counterintuitive, but one of the first things we do after we have our mission and purpose is we say, okay, what are the problems that we see? Let's uncover the problems, and let's start with the biggest one first, right? So do we have any problems? Not sure yet. May not know enough about the customer, right? We don't know what they're up against or what their challenges are. Maybe they have internal challenges, right, that they have to fix. So it's all about preparing to go in and actually developing, the questions that we're going to ask and how we're going to ask them to uncover their vision. How do they see the potential agreement? What challenges do they see? What do they need to overcome? And then as we're moving forward, we keep track of certain things that we know are very important. We want to know, and I'd say the most important part of any interaction is, how do they make a decision? who is going to be involved in making that decision. Because a lot of times we can assume, right? And decision can be uncover the decision making. I mean, we could go on for a very long time about all the components of the system, but it's really the idea of I'm trying to help them see and discover something. I'm trying to ask the right questions, uncover their vision. I'm really trying to focus on their decision making and get a really good picture of their side of the table before I start presenting anything. That is a challenge, right? But like I said at the beginning, present to what you uncovered, not what you assume is important to them. Because I've watched recorded sales calls where you cringe when somebody just keeps going and going and going with the presentation. You can see somebody just start to gloss over, right? They start to shut down because they're not ready to make a decision. And you mentioned something earlier that I want to comment on because I think this is pretty important. If you set the right agenda and use a system, and if you give somebody the right to say no, not every time, but a lot of times you can say, hey, regardless of what happens, feel comfortable telling me no at the end. And if that's the case, I hope you'll share feedback with me. Set that as part of your agenda. That if this isn't a fit, like you said, Alice, if it's not a fit and we can't move forward, that's fine. For my own benefit, where were we falling short? What's the real problem? Seen many deals resurrected from that approach, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it is absolutely the way to go into it. And what I want every CEO listening to take note of here is all the preparation, right? We know salespeople need to prepare, and too many of them are winging it. So that right there, right? But the preparation is not all about you, your product, your service, what the salesperson needs. The preparation is all about who are they? Why are they here? What do they need? What do they want? How will they benefit? How can I help them? It's all focused on them. And when we prepare in that way, we're so much more able, right, to maintain that focus that Vlad was just talking about a minute ago, because we're focused on them, not on us, right? And when we focus on us, it all goes awry. We focus on them, and then we can keep things moving, right? And I think that is just really the way that it needs to be, or and for the reason, whatever reasons that it's not. This is why today so many deals are stalled. So many deals are ending in no decision. So many salespeople are struggling because they go in there. All the prep is about them, their product, what they're going to present, and they've got to switch that focus, right, Vlad?
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of what Jim said, some people are presenting and some people are given a script and they just going through those steps of the script, and they go there like blindly. They don't even know if there's an obstacle. They don't notice the obstacle, and they go past obstacle, and they can't figure out why everything is falling apart in the end.
Yeah.
Why they're getting so emotional in the end. And there's so many people who are so uncomfortable to come to that end, and they're anticipating here and no, and their biggest perception is no is the end of the world. No is a death. Right? But while no is just a misconception. No is not a bad outcome. So this is one of the principles of the camp negotiation systems, if you'd allow me to say that, Jim, that the no is not a no is not a bad outcome. It's just a decision that could be changed. And sometimes you actually need to run to no quicker in order to uncover the problems that you need to solve. And by doing that, you're being more effective.
Yeah,
So-
don't be afraid of no, right? Don't be afraid of no. I want to get to know. And I think that is an important thing. Absolutely. Well, I really, like your methodology and your theory around selling, right? Or any agreement. Again, I know that your company works with people who are trying to reach agreements in all different aspects of life. But in sales, we're always trying to reach agreement, right? And CEOs are always trying to reach agreement, like you said, Jim, with their leaders, to keep them and keep them growing and going. And I think it's important to recognize all these moments of negotiation that we have, sales being one of the main important ones that CEOs want because of the revenue. But I do firmly believe that when we stop going after this huge volume that we're all going after these days, and we start really targeting our audience and focusing and going for real high quality, our sellers will be able to have much better conversations. They'll be talking to the right people. They'll be focused on the right things, and they'll be able to actually find the fit and close more deals because of it. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And Alice, who would you prefer to have business with? Someone who is just going through the motions and pitching you, or someone who really understand you and lead you and facilitate the conversation so you could learn more about yourself? You could realize, you can have your aha moment, and through the asking the insightful questions could lead you to the place where you overlooked, the area that you overlook yourself. So what would your preference? Who doesn't push you, or who would ask you like, okay, shall we sign? Who would you prefer?
Yeah, you want the person who's asking you questions and making you think. Gosh, I hadn't thought about that. That's interesting. I'll have to talk to some of my colleagues about that. You want somebody who's asking you insightful questions to help you understand what you're trying to solve for, and not just asking you questions to push you forward, right? And you're not even ready to go forward yet. So, all right. So I know we're running out of time. I hate this because I always want to I always want to talk more about these things. But as we're wrapping up here, let's just talk about a few things that CEOs can do to prepare themselves to be better negotiators and also prepare their teams. Let's just give them, kind of the 1, 2, 3s.
Okay. So I would say the first thing a CEO can do is keep in mind that they're in a position of leadership, right? Everybody, I know they have a board they answer to, they may have shareholders, so they have a lot of bosses, but CEOs are leaders. And as leaders, one of the most important things I think they can do right away is understand who they work for. Okay. They work for their people, the people that are out there selling, the people that are out there really trying to keep the company moving forward. I know CEOs are very busy and they're under a lot of stress, but they work for their team. And when they realize that leadership is not about rank, title, position, or authority, leadership is about connecting with their teammates. And one of the easiest ways to do that is allow their teammates to say no to them. In other words, when they have an opportunity to connect and say, what am I missing? What can we do better to land some of these deals? What mistakes do you think we're making as an organization? And actually let go of that fear of having to be, put on a pedestal that they have to be right all the time. They don't. By giving everybody around them the right to say no and embracing that and showing that they're coachable and that they're not afraid of the word no, that will trigger a collaborative, connective environment where they will sit around the table and start to realize it's, who has the right answer is not the right thing to worry about. It's what's the right answer. And CEOs need to delegate, and they carry a lot on their shoulders. But the more they let people in, collaborate, let them say no to them, I think they'll see an immediate result, immediate change in attitude, immediate change in culture. And keeping people on the team is the name of the game, especially when times are tough. So that's the first, is connecting with your team.
All right, Vlad, you want to jump in with another one?
Well, I would say, to continue that, I would say that number 2, what leaders need to realize, they need to understand what their team requires, what the team would need to improve their performance. They need to understand, if you're talking about sales, what's the nature of sales, and give them the right tools, give them the right focus on that. Instead of pushing them, understanding what would make a difference, what would make a shift, give them the right system, give them the right focus, and build the right environment where they can get better, organize regular practice, and hire a coach that would be responsible for their growth over a long period of time, not just in a quick training in 2 weeks, right? So make the environment where sales can thrive, because it's a human performance skills, and it requires investment. So that I would say it's a number 2. Yeah.
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 Prepare to be successful, right? Let's have everybody on your team be successful. What is that going to take? And Jim, last word, what else?
Embrace failure and study the failures. And failures maybe not the right word. When we don't succeed, that's what we need to spend time looking at. You learn more from losing than you do from winning. And when they realize that, okay, we can't manage results, but we can look at the game film, so to speak, to use a sports analogy. Let's figure out, if you look at the sidelines and you watch some of these professional quarterbacks, what do they do after they throw an interception? They are immediately looking at their iPad, going through the game footage and figuring out what just happened. Where was the breakdown? Where did we fall short? And then the coach comes and pats them on the back after they throw their iPad on the ground because they're upset, and picks them up and says, okay, let's keep moving. So embrace the failure, embrace the things that don't succeed. No is not the end of the world. It's just a decision. And there's a lot of customers out there that may have said no in the past. Opportunity to re-engage them and find out where you fell short if you haven't done that already. So it's not a negative. No is not a negative thing. Not succeeding is valuable. You learn from that. You're never going to hit the top rung of the ladder in negotiation or sales ever. It's a constant process. And so the CEO needs to be coachable, and they need to learn from their lack of success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also in sales, I always remind people, no doesn't mean no, never. It probably just means no, not now. And so always go back, right? And if it's still a no, that's okay, because if you've managed the conversations the way that we're talking about, so that people feel like you were helping them and not pushing them, they may not need to buy what you have, but they may know others who do, and they may be willing to introduce you because of the way you handled the conversations and because you cared about them and whether it was a good fit and not just closing a deal.
Spot on. That's exactly right. Great insight.
Well, thank you both for being here today. I know our time is up, and I'm just so grateful that we got a chance to talk about negotiation a little bit, coming to agreements, and how to help your salespeople to have the right focus and the right mindset, and to use a system to make sure that they're comfortable having this type of conversation that goes deeper. And it's all about the person that they're addressing and not all about them. So, all right, if people wanted to find you, where can they go?
Well, they can go to campnegotiations.com.
Yep,
Absolutely. That's probably the easiest. They can, Vlad and I both are on LinkedIn. We have, kind of a handful of coaches. We're not a huge company, but we're out there, and there's a lot of free resources on our site. We have a lot of podcasts, blogs, things we've done. And, they can also read Start with No, Lead from No. And Vlad just published a book, proud of that, to be able to announce that. So that's doing well, I hear. So we're there. Just Google Camp Negotiations, Start with No, Lead from No. You'll get pointed in the right direction, and we will talk to you.
And we will put all of that in the show notes as well. But remember, if you do want to connect with Jim or Vlad on LinkedIn, please tell them that you heard them here on Sales Talk for CEOs. Have a wonderful day, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Alice.
If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.